Today we'll be talking to Mr. Nuttall, Head of History, about the Belgium trip. Can you please tell us how the trip came about?
Yeah, but that would be more Mr. Pancott and Mr. Goodyear and Mrs. Goodyear, because they started doing that trip. I've only been here 4 years and the trip's in its 13th year now. So, I mean, the reason they introduced it in the first place, I think, was to try and give the students, we always studied for the First World War in Year 9, and just trying to give the students a sense of the reality of the war, rather than just learning about it in the classroom or in a textbook, to actually go to these places and see them for themselves.
Yeah.
I think I gained like kind of more respect, like going to Pianforini and stuff, like because I've kind of seen it up close, and there were some people there who had been in the war themselves and told us about it, and like I've had quite a personal encounter with it now, rather than just reading about it and maybe not understanding it as much.
I definitely think you learn more than what you learn in a book, because you get to see it firsthand rather than just hear what it was like, to actually get the experience of how they actually were treated and how they suffered during the war.
I think definitely being there in where they fought and the graves with these cemeteries and stuff was kind of showed you. Because when you're just reading from a book, you kind of just learn about it. You don't really experience like what would have been like.
What do you hope the students will get from it?
I think the big thing is just some sense of the scale of war, because I don't think they can get that. Their experiences of warfare tend to be through films, video games, TV shows, things like that, things on the internet. I don't think they rarely see the reality of war, which is a great thing. I hope that none of our students ever experience war, but I think it's important for them to know what the reality of it is, and to go to the cemeteries and the graveyards and to see the sheer number of people involved. Hopefully it keeps in mind the reality of warfare, and perhaps they can, in their lives, be conscious of it and what they can do to try and avoid that.
We could see what the conditions were like. We looked at some trenches and cemeteries mostly.
I think I'll remember most about the trip will be seeing all the graves, because I thought it might just be one field of one set of graves for each section of fighting countries in the war. I didn't expect the sheer scale to be as big as it was.
The thing I remember most about the trip was like how awful the war was. Because I saw like how many graves there were, and it just like I didn't really think it was quite that like bad the war, but like the impact of it and stuff.
What was your own highlight of the trip?
There's two actually. I think there's two places we go that I find move me the most. Vimy Ridge is very impressive, and that's a place where there is the reconstructions of the trenches, so students can get an idea of what the trenches actually look like. But then we have the huge memorial there. But I think what's very powerful at Vimy Ridge is the damage on the land, how the land is still all churned up by the bombs from nearly 100 years ago. The one I find most moving though is the smallest cemetery we go to, which is the Wellington Cemetery. Sorry, no, it's not the Wellington, it's the Devonshire Cemetery. And what's interesting there is, although it's the smallest one we go to, every single grave, almost every grave that has the same date, the 1st of July 1916, which was the Battle of the Somme. And I think to see that smaller number of graves gives you a sense of the human reality of it. It's sometimes hard to picture 10,000 people, but when you have 100 graves and they all have the same name and they have the date on, and we have a poem written by one of the people who's buried in that graveyard who died, who wrote the poem just a few days before he died. I think that human story makes it really quite powerful.
I was expecting the trip to be sort of really quite sad and real. It's like very real.
I think the thing that's kind of stuck in my mind was the men and gate service, and it was just the atmosphere in there when it was all quiet, and you would see all the names of the people who have died, and it was really overwhelming.
It was really shocking, the numbers of graves that you do see, especially at Pianforini, and even at Essex Farm, Walgrave, where they've got a lot of Yorkshire graves.
How do you think it will help the students once they are back in school?
I think sort of directly, we finally use it. They do in Year 9, they do this project on the First World War, the Tommy Scrapbook we call it, and you do find a lot of the students writing and talking about things in that scrapbook that they experienced on the trip. But I'm hoping it's sort of more long term than that. I hope it's not just for that one project, but something that stays with them. And I think even at 13 years old, it's quite hard to understand some of the things we see there, but I hope as students get older, they kind of look back and they remember those experiences that they've had there. So I do think it has an impact on their work in the classroom in terms of what they do with the scrapbook, but hopefully it has that longer term impact as well.
So I think I did get what I expected from the trip, and I did enjoy it, but also did learn what I won't learn anywhere else.
Yeah.
And I find myself lucky going.